Hi, this is Sam Frick, founder and editor at Around the Northeast Corner, and welcome back to another edition of the history of the Northeast state, starting with the history of the NEIC. In our last video, we talked about the history of the conference's early years all the way through the early 1970s. When we last talked about, in our last video, we talked about expansion really heating up with the NEIC, consolidation becoming a huge part of the changes going on in the conference, setting the stage for the eventual building steps to the conference's demise and later on the formation of the NHC. Here in this video, we'll talk about the remaining 2 decades of the NEIC's existence, which includes an in-depth analysis on the downfall of the conference and the things that happened that led to the conference's eventual end. So let's go ahead and continue on with a look at staying with the early 1970s. By 1973, the NEIC starts to experiment with their football conference, and they add 2 divisions for the first time. In the East-West division, that division included Belmont, Columbia City, Concordia, DeKalb, and New Haven. In the North-South division, Angola, Bluffton, East Noble, Garrett, and South Adams were a part of the other division. Concordia and South Adams took the first divisional championships, with Concordia winning the championship game between the 2 division champions 16-14. In 1974, New Haven's Mark Craney lost in the 138-pound state finals bracket to Warren Central's Scott Spencer in an 11-3 decision. DeKalb and Garrett that fall won their respective divisions, but no championship game was played due to Garrett being invited by the IHSAA to participate in the state tournament. Back then, the IHSAA had a cluster format, so that only a certain number of schools were able to play in the state tournament, and the IHSAA had to invite those schools to play in that state tournament. If you were not invited in the state tournament, there was one extra week that you could play, a championship week, where you can actually end your season with a championship of any kind without ever playing the state tournament. Obviously, as the IHSAA moves away from the cluster format, this would soon become a non-starter, because by this point, in the late 80s, you're going to see everybody involved in the state tournament, to which this whole format that the NEIC did, that is not going to last. But 1974 would be a special year amongst the hearts and memories of Garrett football fans, because Garrett made it all the way to the state finals. And when that state finals, they took on North Knott's, as you can see what the IHSAA posted through their state finals program. And on the Garrett Clipper, you saw what they'll eventually do that season, and that's winning the whole thing in 1974. Nice picture there from the KPC News sports department back in the early 70s. By the way, Paul Rassel was named the Mental Attitude Award winner for Garrett football. Let's talk about that first state championship team. That year, they were undefeated. They were undefeated in their conference, undefeated on the season. They were North-South Division champions. This was their 4th unbeaten season in the last 11 years. They became the first ever conference football team to win a sectional due to the fact that they were invited in the state tournament, because in the sectional play, they shut out Whiting 7-0 at Garrett, which led to Garrett playing for the state championship. There was no regional back then, no semi-state back then. You win your sectional, you play for a state championship. In the state finals at Garrett, in the 1A state finals, Garrett defeated North Knott's 20-6 to win the school's first state championship. And one of the most memorable teams to ever come across the northeast area of the state, one of the most memorable areas in the history of the KPC News coverage, as you can see here, as they had the photo provided on the Garrett State Championship team. One of the most dominant teams to ever come out of the tri-state and northeast corner area. By 1974, Columbia City, East Noble, and Garrett became the first conference volleyball programs to win a sectional. In 1975, East Noble's Larry Patton was a runner-up in the boys golf state meet, losing to Yorktown's Don LaPierre by 152 to 153. The lower score was the winning score. In 1975, the conference fielded girls track and girls basketball for the first time due to the existence of Title IX. Columbia City won the first of 2 straight girls track meets in 1975. Homestead would make a good impression by winning the next 3 meets, and we'll talk about that right now. So Homestead comes in. Concordia is out of the conference, by 1975. Concordia, having already played in 2 conferences, decided to fully commit to playing the SAC, leaving the NEIAC altogether. In response to this, the Homestead Spartans, who have only been a school for only 4 years, they would leave the ACAC, knowing that they were already becoming a powerful school as it is. They would join the NEIC right at the right time, really. It was just a perfect fit for Homestead by this point because of just how big and how quickly they were growing as a school and an athletics program. And Homestead would have a massive impact on not just the NEIC, but also moving forward with the NHC's existence. In 1975, DeKalb won their 3rd straight boys cross-country meet. In that same year, Bluffton and Belmont were crowned divisional champions for the final time in football, with Bluffton winning the championship game by the score of 14-12. After that season, the conference removed divisions altogether and never looked back. In 1976, DeKalb won the first ever conference girls basketball title. They will become a common opponent when it comes to championships in girls basketball. DeKalb also won the first girls gymnastics conference title in 1976 as more girls sports start to be added into the NEIC's library of sports. Homestead would eventually dominate the sport, including a streak of 6 straight conference titles to end the NEIC's run in gymnastics. The sport would be carried over to the NHC and is still a part of today's conference competition in the Northeast state. Staying with 1976, the NEIC hosted its first girls basketball tournament with DeKalb defeating South Adams 51-44 at the Allen County War Memorial Coliseum. DeKalb won the girls tournament 5 times that only Columbia City matched in that 13-year span. Homestead would go on to win 12 straight girls tennis titles from 1978 until the conference dissolved, and we'll talk about that more in a second. The only 4-peat in NEIC baseball happened in 1976. Belmont, DeKalb, East Normal, New Haven all shared the conference. The next year, 1977, the NEIC hosted its first boys basketball tournament, with Belmont winning 75-73 over DeKalb at the Memorial Coliseum. The conference fielded girls tennis, with East Noble controversially upsetting Homestead to win the first championship. Homestead would win every other championship until the conference dissolved. I'm sure Homestead was probably looking at this thinking, man, we did not like the way that 1977 season ended. We're going to win every other championship afterwards. Staying with 1977, Columbia City football made the playoffs, losing the 2A sectional title game 21-7 at Plymouth. DeKalb would have a run to state finals by 1977, and it's a run to the state finals. In that season, they were 30-7, 8-1 in conference play, coming up just short of winning the conference. DeKalb defeated Garrett at the DeKalb sectional 3-1. At Columbia City, they defeated Wayne and Snyder to win the regional. And then going to South Bend Clay in semi-state, DeKalb defeated Hammond Gavitt and LaPorte to make it to their first ever state finals run for the school and for the program. In the state semifinals at Busch Stadium, they lost 3-1 at the hands of Logansport, who would go on to win a state championship. DeKalb's Robert A. Heimich won the Mental Attitude Award for baseball. And don't worry, this will not be the last time you will hear about DeKalb baseball going far in the state tournament. By 1978, Belmont became the first conference wrestling team to win semi-state. In that state finals, Belmont's Rex Brewer was second in the 119-pound state bracket, losing to Bloomington South's Keith Saunders 7-0. Belmont's Chris Malin was second in the 185-pound state bracket, falling to Goshen's Dave Edlin in a major decision 12-4. By 1979, Belmont's Gene Grote placed second in the 126-pound state bracket, falling to Carmel's Stan Basket 6-2, but Chris Malin won the state championship in the 185 state bracket with a 5-1 decision over Snyder's Terry Burden. Going back to 1978, DeKalb recorded the NEIC boys golf three-peat, the first one since 1963. Belmont became the first volleyball team to win a regional in 1978, the fall of 78. Homestead football made the playoffs, losing the 2A sectional title game 19-0 at Goshen, who would go on to win a state championship. Staying with the fall of 1978, Homestead's Lisa Lukin, knowing that girls golf has recently been added into the IHSA's realm of sports, Lisa was placed second in the girls golf state meet, losing to Richmond's Kathy Crum 71-76. By 1979, the NEIAC had a 3-team share in girls basketball. Columbia City, East Noble, Homestead all shared that conference. Belmont Wrestling finished second in the IHSA state finals, losing to Arsenal Tech as a team by less than 3 points, which also reflects on Belmont's individual success in the 1979 state finals. Columbia City that same year became the first conference boys cross-country team that fall to win a regional in 1979. Did I told you that the Cal was going to make another appearance? All right, here you go. 1980, the Cal gets back to state. They finally win the whole thing. On the season, they went 30-8, 7-2 in the conference in a 3-team share with East Noble and Homestead. They were the Cal sectional champions by defeating Eastside 15-1. Good grief. In the Columbia City Regional, they defeated Elmhurst in a close game and then also dominated Warsaw to win that regional. And then the South Bend Clay Semi-State defeated Crown Point and LaPorte in tight, low-scoring contests to make it back to the state finals, hosted by Busch Stadium. In the state finals, they defeated Jeffersonville 5-1. In the final game, they defeated Muncie North 1-0 to win the Cal's first ever state championship. This will not be the last state championship won by DeKalb as a school, and we will later talk about another sport at DeKalb that would later win another state championship. By the way, during that 1980 state run, Mike Hasselman was named the Mental Attitude Award for baseball. 1980 was also a year for Belmont's Denny Farrote to place second in the 105-pound state bracket, falling to Hammond Gavitt's Kenneth Tiroli in a 3-0 decision. Jeff Franz placed second in the 119-pound state bracket, representing Belmont, as he lost to Mike Nickum of Delta in a 119 state bracket, 6-2. Also in 1980, the Cowboys basketball recorded the first conference title three-peat since 1946. That would be the last time this occurred for boys hoops until the late 80s, when Belmont would have a three-peat in the mid-1980s. I, for some reason, did not fix that earlier. My apologies. New Haven football that fall made the playoffs in 1980, losing the 2A sectional title game 21-15 at Northwood. DeKalb became the first NEIC boys cross-country team to win semi-state. They did it for 3 straight years from 1980 to 1982. East Noble became the first conference team to win a girls gymnastics sectional by 1981. Homestead won state championships in gymnastics from 1983 to 1985. Jill Beauchamp was a 1984 state champion in all-around. Irene Hattop, 1988 state champion in uneven parallel bars. Staying with 1981, Belmont's Brent Farrote was a 98-pound state champion with a win by fall at the 524 mark over Nick Ellington of Bloomington South. And also, in that same year, 1981, DeKalb Baseball, who had already won a state championship the year prior, earned the first four-peat since 1960. By 1981, an old and familiar member of the conference, Garrett, leaves the conference for the final time. As by 1981, Garrett departs the conference for the second and final time, investing 48 combined years in the conference and joining the NECC. The conference in the NECC would begin its decade-long reign of expansion, as the NEIC would soon see its last years coming. With this move, the conference was reduced to 9 teams. By 1981, New Haven football defeated Concord 24-13 to win sectionals, before falling to Goshen on the road 14-0 in regionals. 1982, on the boys basketball tournament scenes, Homestead achieved its first of 2 back-to-back boys basketball tournament titles with a 78-73 win over DeKalb at the Memorial Coliseum. DeKalb followed that in 1983 and 84. In 1982, Columbia City won their 3rd straight NEIC girls basketball tournament title with a 54-43 win over DeKalb, also hosted by the Memorial Coliseum. DeKalb won the conference meet record 4th straight title in 1982 for track. The NEIC fielded girls cross country for the first time, with Columbia City winning the first of 4 meet titles from 82 to 85. And then going back to boys basketball briefly, Homestead would repeat one more time in 1987 and 1988. 1982 saw New Haven becoming the first four-peat champion in boys track since 1952. Angola football made the playoffs in 82 that fall, losing the 2A sectional title game at home 12-0 to Norwell. Bluffton football made the 1A sectional title game, losing at home 13-6 to reigning state finalist Woodland. Woodland went to state in 81, fell short. 82, Woodland trying to get back to state. Eventually, they would fall short. Staying with 1982 in football, New Haven recorded 4 straight conference football titles in 82 for the first time since 1951. They lost in the 82 sectional finals 20-14 at Peru. I should correct that. New Haven football won a section. No, never mind. Forget what I just said. That's correct. Whatever I just said is definitely correct. 1983, Belmont's Jeff Bennett placed second in the state heavyweight bracket, falling to Indianapolis Cathedral's Andy Cope in a major decision, 11-3. And also in 1983, in that fall, New Haven football lost a sectional title game, 41-0 to Bishop Dwayner. In 1984, East Noble's Dorinda Grist was named the Mental Attitude Award winner for girls gymnastics. By 1983, Columbia City girls basketball recorded the conference's only three-peats. The next year, DeKalb's Dan Brooke was named the 167-pound state champion in a 6-5 decision over Jasper's Todd Kirsteins. East Noble's Phil Yuska won the pole vault state meet in track with a score of 15 feet and 6 inches. DeKalb that fall made the football playoffs, losing the 2A sectional title game 28-14 at defending state champion Fort Wayne Bishop Dwayner. This was the last year of the IHSA's cluster format before making it a state playoffs for everyone to be involved with. 1986, Belmont's Greg Kreider was placed second in the 126 state brackets, losing to Hobart's Trent Kotz in a 6-4 decision. That fall in 1984, Belmont girls volleyball made the first of several runs to stay, although their next state finals run would not come until about 26 years later when they were a member of the NHC. But staying with 1984, Belmont went 35-8 that year, undefeated in conference, as they were conference champions. They won the Belmont sectional, the Huntington North regional, and the Marion semi-state. I don't have the actual scores for those runs in the state tournament because it's not made available to me. So apologies in advance for all you Belmont fans out there. In the state semifinals hosted by Ben Davis, they lost to Clinton Prairie. DeKalb made it once again to the state finals in 1986, and they would win the first ever football state championship in the history of DeKalb football. On the season, they were 13-1, 4-1 in conference play, falling just short of a conference championship. In sectionals, they defeated Culver Academy's 14-0 to win the sectional. Regionals, they won 43-21 at Logansport. Semi-state, they defeated Munster 14-6. In the state finals hosted by the Hoosier Dome, which would later be renamed to the RCA Dome, the former home of the Indianapolis Colts, DeKalb won the 4A state championship with a 28-7 win over Franklin Central. DeKalb football would make one more run in the football state tournament in the early 90s as a member of the NHC. Now we start to get into the latter stages of the conference's history, and we begin with 1980s tennis. And during this time, Homestead would dominate the remaining years in tennis, winning every conference championship from henceforward until the conference dissolved. In addition to capping off 12 straight conference titles in girls tennis, they did the same for boys tennis from 1977 until its final year in 88. The streak of dominance continued into the Northeast Hoosier Conference. For cross country, 1985 cross country, Columbia City was placed 8th in the 85 state finals. By 1986, Angola and Columbia City won girls cross-country sectionals. Columbia City won 5 straight from 1982 to 86. The first sectional championships representing the NEIAC. Angola placed 8th in the 1986 state finals. By 1988, following a meet title repeat from East Noble, New Haven's boys cross-country won the last meet, which was their first since 1968. Homestead won their first and only NEIC meet in the conference's last year for girls cross country. At the time of this video, the Cowboys cross country won the conference championship 9 times. New Haven won it 5 times. Shifting over to volleyball, by 1988, the Cow won the final girls volleyball championship ever. It capped off the conference volleyball run by winning 3 of the final 4 conference titles. DeKalb's success would continue into the NHC, but only momentarily, as Belmont will continue to have dominance and even get better in the sport of volleyball, as Belmont led the NEIC with 6 conference titles, with Columbia City, DeKalb, and New Haven all winning 3 conference titles respectively. Apologies if you're hearing that in the background. There's nothing we can do about that. In football, DeKalb won the final NEIC football conference in 1988. On October 14th of 1988, the final conference game ever played was Columbia City defeating Bluffton 34-21. Sorry, I need to go back real quick. Anyway, I was going to say Bluffton, I'm not sure what happened there, but anyway, Bluffton would go on to make it all the way to semi-state in 1988, achieving the deepest football run in the history of Bluffton football, as the Tigers would eventually have an exit in the NEIC. Now we shift over to basketball. By 1989, South Adams boys and Columbia City girls won the final conference basketball tournaments at the Memorial Coliseum. South Adams defeated East Noble 55-53. This was their lone basketball tournament title, let alone conference title in general for boys basketball. Columbia City defeated rival East Noble 56-46. I'm not sure what happened there. Actually, there's a typo here. Columbia City actually defeated DeKalb 56-46. I'm not sure what happened there. The final 6 girls basketball tournaments went to either Columbia City or DeKalb. Please disregard that PowerPoint. It should say Columbia City defeated DeKalb 56-46. Major typo on my part. We'll go ahead and continue. Columbia City repeated as conference champions for the final year for girls basketball in 1989. Belmont won the last ever conference boys basketball title in 1989, which consisted of a span of 4 titles in 5 years, including a span of 3 consecutive championships from 1985 to 1987. In total, Columbia City, Bluffton, Auburn, Southside won 8 boys basketball titles. New Haven won 7. Belmont, DeKalb, and Concordia won 6. On the girls' side, Columbia City won 7 conference titles. DeKalb won 5. Homestead won 5 boys basketball tournaments. Columbia City and DeKalb girls each won 5. In wrestling, as I mentioned earlier, Belmont's success continues into the NEIC's last years. By 1987, Belmont won the wrestling state finals by defeating Evans of a Modern Day 70.5 to 65.5. They would repeat the next year in 1988, defeating Lawrence North by the score of 59.5 to 51. Individually in 1987, John Farreau was second in the 112-pound state bracket, losing to Cathedral's Lance Ellis 3-2. Paul Baker was second in the 132-pound state bracket, falling to Delta's Jeff Tuttle 9-8. John Kintz was also second in the 177-pound state bracket, falling to Bremen's Ron Koffel 5-1. That's a familiar name for all you Bremen fans out there. The next year, 1988, Baker, the same Paul Baker, won the state championship, defeating Tony Abbott of Muncie Southside 8-4. And then Gunsit defeated Sean McGinley of Cathedral 8-5. As you can see here, Paul Baker, 130-pound state champion. Paul Gunsit, 135-pound state champion. By 1989, Belmont concluded its conference run in wrestling by winning their 19th straight conference title, and that streak started in 1972. This era of dominance would continue to this day in the NHC and now the Northeast 8. We look to golf. 1986, the conference fielded girls golf for the first time, with Homestead winning that title. East Noble would go on to win the final 2 titles following that year. 1987, East Noble became the first girls golf team from the conference to win sectionals. And by 1989, DeKalb ended the conference run in boys golf by winning their 3rd straight title, which also included a streak of titles in 4 of the last 5 seasons. In total, DeKalb won 8 boys golf titles. Garrett 6, New Haven and Kennedyville each won 4 conference titles. In track, South Adams' Devonna Runkle won the shot put state finals meet at 45 feet, and 3.5 inches. By 1987, Columbia City's Deb Sowers won the 100-meter and 300-meter low hurdle state final meets. As you can see the times on the slide. 1988, Homestead's Greg Hart won the first of 3 straight discus state meets. 1988 was 182 feet and 8 inches. The next year was 193 feet. And then by 1990, he actually did better and scored 216 feet and 9 inches. Also that same year, Homestead won the final ever conference boys track meet by winning 4 straight from 86 to 89, including a streak of 6 titles in 7 years. From 1986 to 89, Homestead completed the first and only 4-peat in the conference's history of girls track. In total, Homestead won this meet 5 times on the girls, 8 times on the boys. Homestead boys would go on to win 6 sectionals between 1977 and 1990, including 4 straight from 1987 to 1990. In 1986 state finals, South Adams girls placed 10th. In 1987, Columbia City girls track placed 7th in 87 and placed 4th in 1988 state finals. In 1987 state finals, the Homestead boys placed 7th. And last but certainly not least, the NEIAC goes through baseball and softball, and this is the last sports to ever hand out conference championships. By 1986, the conference fielded softball, with Belmont winning the first championship. The next year, Belmont, Columbia City, and New Haven all shared the softball championship. By 1989, DeKalb won the final 2 softball titles, both in 88 and 89. And then Belmont baseball won the last ever conference championship that year in 1989. In total for baseball, Decatur won 13 baseball titles, New Haven won 10, Columbia City 8, DeKalb won 7 baseball titles. When Belmont won their last championship in the conference, that was their 4th baseball championship. A lot of these schools that had success in baseball, it will translate into the NHC at the start of its existence. So now we get into the timeline of the conference's downfall, and I want to make this real quick. A huge credit to the Journal-Gazette for having this database still available about the News Sentinel's coverage of the conference's downfall, because it would certainly be a huge part of its success, and the downfall of the NEIAC would certainly play a role into a lot of things transpiring to what we see today. On October 6, 1986, Belmont, Columbia City, DeKalb, East Noble, Homestead, New Haven mutually agreed to leave the conference to form a new one. On January 14, 1987, Angola was accepted to join the NECC for the 1987-88 season. Angola would not fully leave the conference until 1989. Initially, the NEIC was supposed to fold after the 1987-88 season, but as you're going to soon find out, it became a very long, dragged situation to where it was very clear that the 6 member schools saw the writing on the wall with the conference, feeling like there needs to be a change with the conference membership, and this decision unfortunately needed to happen for those 6 schools. We'll talk more about that in a second. And because of the conference shakeup, and with a new conference being formed, rumors started coming out about Carroll and Norwell potentially leaving the ACAC, leading to questions on whether the ACAC would even fold altogether due to the changes going on with both conferences. Well, on May 21st, 1987, those rumors would escalate. Carroll accepted the invitation and was later approved to join the NHC for the 1989-90 season. On June 13th of 1987, Chair Busco was approved to join the NECC for 1988-89 season. Busco would not fully leave the ACAC until 1989. Just 5 days later, Norwell announced they were joining the NHC for the 1989-90 season, leading to questions of what the ACAC was going to do next. And remember, in October of 1986, the 6 schools had decided they were going to join a new conference, and they left out 3 schools in the process: Angola, Bluffton, and South Adams. One would think, and even an athletic director even thought that, this would be an opening for Bluffton and South Adams to potentially join the ACAC, to which they did. On August 21st, 1987, just 2 months after applying, Bluffton and South Adams accepted to join the conference for the 1989-90 season, leading to paving way for the NEIAC's dissolvement, the formation of the Northeast Hoosier Conference, and all the changes occurring for all three conferences involved in the process. It was a messy situation. It was a very public situation, and the News Channel did a very good job of staying on top of the news, being consistent and clear about what was going on with the uncertainty of the ACAC, the uncertainty with the three schools being left out by the NEIAC, and the process to which the 6-member schools that decided to form a new conference took place into the process. So now we got to ask the question, why did this happen? Well, there are 3 reasons why this decision happened. The first reason would be geography. Early on, when the NEIC was formed in 1927, the conference reached 8 counties. It was ahead of its time in an era where schools were playing in county pods. That was a way for schools to get out of those pods and play in a first truly formed conference. However, the growth of smaller geographically centralized conferences led to concerns on travel costs and some schools leaving the conference for a more geographically friendly conference, as we saw with the Fort Wayne schools, as we saw with Garrett, as we had seen at times with Angola. Eventually, the NEIC fell behind the times when it came to understanding the geographical landscape of the conference. Why it took the conference this long to realize that, I don't know. Rationale number 2, there was a great disparity in school sizes. This was very much public when it came to why the NEIC dissolved. They mentioned geography being an issue. They mentioned the imbalance of school sizes. By this point in 1989, you're dealing with schools with thousands of more students than the smallest schools in the conference. We're talking about Bluffton, South Adams being pure 2A schools, playing against schools like East Noble and DeKalb and Homestead and Columbia City, easily getting close to 1,000 kids every year. And Homestead by itself was growing rapidly each and every year, just like we will see when we talk about Carroll. The 2 suburban communities in Allen County are the fastest growing community districts in all of Allen County. New Haven's growing. Schools are getting bigger. And so by this point, the competition between the top and the bottom, it stretches wider because the smaller schools just cannot compete with that type of athleticism and competition that the bigger schools are able to provide. Okay, let's pick up where we left off here. So we mentioned geography. We mentioned great disparity in school size between the big schools and the small schools. Those 2 played a major role in the conference dissolving. And then the third and final reasoning behind why this happened, well, the conference became unstable. The debate of expansion versus travel became a huge problem. When the conference formed, it already grew to about 10 schools already. The conference seemed very evident about trying to acquire as many schools as possible, becoming a super conference in a way that the NEIC did to a lesser extent. And then the travel became an issue by that point. The constant movement in and out of the conference eventually led to the inevitable end for the NEIC's existence and for the formation of the Northeast Hoosier Conference. And so it's a very complicated history, and I would consider this to be arguably one of the most difficult decisions ever made in terms of a conference dissolving. It was controversial for some schools. It was a heated situation. It was a very difficult situation for all schools involved, but ultimately, when we look back in history, this proved to be the right decision for all schools involved. The NEIC dissolved, but the NHC would have a successful run through 2015, and then the NEA becomes as healthy as it's ever been, heading into its 10th year of existence. Angola proved to have a very successful run in the NECC, just to the same with Cherubusco to a lesser extent, and then Bluffton and South Adams, who were both struggling by this point in 1989, they both would find success in the ACAC, as well as Norwell and Carroll eventually get better in the NHC and come out of the NHC as better schools in the long run. We'll talk more about the NHC in our next video, and we'll talk more about why the NE8 was formed in the first place. But that is all I have for today. Thank you for listening. If you haven't done so yet, like this video and hit subscribe to keep track of our latest videos and latest posts on what's going to be coming next for NEC Sports. Until next time, so long.